Welcome to Recalculating Small Business. Like its award-winning book, Recalculating is dedicated to small business in America. Your hosts are Don Mazzella and Dan Perkins. Don Mazzella is the editor-in-chief of the Small Business Digest. Dan Perkins is a registered investment advisor with 43 years' experience in managing money.
Dan Perkins here, your co-host, along with Don Mazzella of Recalculating for Small Business. Our radio program is dedicated to you, helping the small business owners increase their profits. We draw our name from Recalculating, voted the best small business book of 2017 by the Independent Press. In this book, it features ways to grow your small business. Now, here's Don Mazzella.
Dan, I'm really happy that VistaPrint's Director of Brand Management, Yellin Nunes, is joining us today. Like you, Dan, I use VistaPrint a lot, and I'll give it an unsolicited endorsement only because their customer service unit in Jamaica has helped me out of more jams than I care to remember, and the quality of their customer service is outstanding. Plus, they deliver a great product. With that happy note, Sarah, we welcome you to the program.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Well, Sarah, we originally invited you to the program to talk about VistaPrint's program for small business, which unfortunately the ability to enter it has passed. But tell us about it and why VistaPrint did it, and what is the purpose of helping small business?
Yeah, definitely. So we launched what we're calling a wish granting program, and this really came out of research that we had and conversations that we had with small businesses around some of the challenges that they face and the struggles that they have. And we know for a lot of small businesses that financing and funding is really a big challenge. And we know that sometimes it just takes a little bit of a push and that it doesn't even need to be that much to make a really big difference to them. And so we wanted to understand what we could do to support that. Small business owners and small businesses are our core customer. Our whole company is built around them, and we know so much about them. We spend so much time with them and talking to them and learning about them and creating products and experiences for them. And so we just feel like we really have a responsibility to create programs that really benefit and help them continue to do the really great work that they do in the world. And so this program specifically was a little bit of an experiment for us because we are trying to understand the best way to be helpful. And so what we did was we asked small businesses to tell us what it is that they could use most to really kind of give them a push to move them forward. And it could be anything. It doesn't have to be marketing products. It could be they need to make a new hire, they need some new equipment. It was really open-ended. And we chose, a select number of businesses to grant their wish and to give them this thing that they really need. And what we're hoping in this first kind of experiment we're calling is to hear back from small businesses, understand if that was helpful. The reason we did it this way instead of just a straight dollar amount is we were hoping it would help them really focus in on what it is that they need and really help propel them forward in a faster way. But we don't know yet if that's how it works. So we're still collecting feedback. We want to hear if it was successful. Our goal is that we will do this on a regular basis. So it's not over yet. There's still opportunities. And we're hoping that we can make this either a quarterly or ongoing initiative in some way to be delivering on needs of small businesses.
Okay. In the meantime, is there any place that our listeners can write to you or to VistaPrint about this?
Yeah, definitely. So you can send an email to our PR inbox, which is pr@vistaprint.com.
Say it again, please.
pr@vistaprint.com.
Okay. But now let me, I rushed into this, and now I want to back up a little bit and ask, what's your background and how long have you been with VistaPrint and what do you do?
So I've been at VistaPrint about 8.5 years. My background is in marketing. I've worked in a variety of different roles and companies in marketing throughout the years. My time at VistaPrint has been really focused on driving growth with the small business community. I've had various marketing roles here as well, but my role right now is really focused on how we deliver on the VistaPrint brand. And so I manage our public relations, our social media, our blog, the resource center on our site, and we're all focused on all of these channels and all of these platforms around delivering on small business insights. What is it that we know about small business owners? How do we deliver on what it is they need? What are the right ways to do that? How do we interact on a more one-to-one personal level and create stronger connections and really showcase the breadth of offering that VistaPrint has, but also go beyond our product offering to deliver advice, education, information, inspiration, motivation. And so we really kind of span a broad range of activities and initiatives and content to engage with small businesses, worldwide.
Well, I'm going to take one more question and turn it over to Dan. But I guess my question is, what are one or two things that the small business mostly need from a company like yours?
Yeah, so we do a lot of research around that, and we found there's sort of two key areas that small business owners need the most help in, and one that always comes to the top is financing and funding, and so that's partly where this idea for our wish list granting program came from. But they also really need marketing help, and that's somewhere that we can really play directly because these small businesses, they were created out of passion. Small business owners, they're really good at the things they're doing, but they aren't marketers. They don't know how to create a marketing plan, how to create a brand, how to use different products or different types of marketing to drive growth or to drive retention. And so we really feel like we have a really great place there to help these customers do better in that space and create different types of campaigns, materials. We have a lot of resources centered around design because we know how important that really professional, cohesive look is to small businesses to really feel like they are a business. And so knowing how much of a pain point that is and how challenging it is, we do a lot to really think about how we can help deliver in that space for them.
Dan, I turn it over to you.
Thank you. Sarah, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Would this be a correct statement that VistaPrint is a perfect example of e-commerce?
That's interesting. A perfect example of e-commerce.
Do you have bricks and mortar?
We have one brick and mortar actually in Toronto that is an experiment as well, but it's not really set up as a commerce platform or as a sales tool. It's really more about experience and helping our customers or prospects understand what they can do with VistaPrint, touch and feel the product, use our design resources. So I would say, we definitely are a pure e-commerce player. We drive, I would say 100% of our revenue strictly through our e-commerce platform.
And what was the logic of putting in a bricks and mortar store in Toronto or any place?
This was really about trying to learn more about what our customer needs are and to understand whether we should be offline as well as online. We know that a lot of our customers really like interacting directly face-to-face with somebody, especially when they're creating designs for their business, because their design really is a representation of who they are, and it's so much about how they present themselves to the world. And we would just hear this a lot, that it was really challenging sometimes to do it all online and not be able to touch and feel the product or talk face-to-face to someone. And so we started exploring a lot of ways to deliver on that need. And it's not just a brick and mortar. We also are looking at different ways of interacting with designers through chat and video. We created a product we call Promo Box that allows you to get a subscription service, like a Birchbox. You get different products every month just to give you a sense for what you can do and how you can leverage your design. And then we really wanted to explore this idea of what if we did have an offline space? What if we did have a brick and mortar? We could use it for local events. We could bring in education opportunities. We could use it as a meeting space and a place to connect. And we could showcase our products and help with design. And people could order in store and pick up, or online, and pick up in the store. And we just really wanted to understand what that experience for customers would be like and if it's something that would be worthwhile for us to invest in.
And how long has your store been open?
It's been open for about a year, and we're definitely seeing there's a lot of value in terms of all those things I mentioned around connecting customers to each other, connecting them to us, understanding VistaPrint. It's not driving sales the same way that our e-commerce platform is driving sales. And so we're starting to explore, do we look at something like pop-ups that could do a similar thing but not be as much of an investment? Other ways to bring our offering to people face-to-face without owning a space.
So when you think in terms of pop-ups, are you thinking in terms of kiosks in malls, things like that?
That's one area we're exploring. We've tried some things with WeWork and doing some pop-up experiences in WeWorks because we know that's a great option for small businesses who need a place to gather and connect and work but don't have an office. Mm-hmm. We're thinking about local events. So we're still very much, it's early days, we're still very much in the exploration phase of this.
If you look back, and I've been using you a long time, but if you look back at your business, your business is, by and large, as an industry segment, a relatively low growth business historically, because the product that you offer was typically sold to the small businessman at a local print shop.
Right.
And you dealt with whatever platforms they had. You developed an e-commerce model that allowed individuals to use the creative arts to make something special, much more so than they could actually obtain on a local basis, and get it in a relatively quick basis. So you turned the industry upside down and took what had been a slow to no growth business and grew it into a growth business by convincing people to switch their behavior. What you did, you changed the behavior, and you made it interesting and challenging at the same time rewarding, because where the old traditional model, the printer told you what you were going to do, you have the ability to give to the customer the ability to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, definitely. And this was one of the insights that our founder, Robert Keane, really had, which was there wasn't a place for small businesses to get what they needed, in the way they needed to do it. Oftentimes they were locked into large print runs, which didn't work for them. They didn't need, 5,000 brochures or 10,000 business cards. That wasn't useful for them. And so, he really wanted to understand, how do we give them something at a low print run quantity? And to do that, it doesn't make sense to invest in all of the manufacturing infrastructure in a local print shop. It really has to go online to make that work, and because it works at scale, right? That's really how our business functions is because of our scale, we're able to print in such low quantities, and the technology is really all centered around that. And then, he also understood that if you're going to be coming online, you need help to do that because you aren't a designer, and you want flexibility, and you want to be able to customize, and you want to feel unique and like no one else has your materials. And so that's where a lot of our design inspiration came from. And it really was a great insight. It really did revolutionize the industry and create a company that had amazing growth rates. It really was a need that he was filling when he started this company.
So what percentage of your business today is still in cards?
I would say about 65% of our business is still in cards. It is very much our core offering. But we really are focused on expanding, and we have had an initiative internally here over the last year or so that's really been all about creating a broader breadth of selection across multiple product categories, both within new types of products, like different types of signs or banners or posters, but also within categories, so different sizes of brochures, different substrates and paper stocks. And really, the insight behind that is centered around, we know small businesses need, they all have different needs at different times. And sometimes they do need a quick, throwaway, low-cost, low-quality product. And sometimes they need something that's really going to last them and is good quality and they're going to spend a little bit more on. And we just wanted to have that option for them no matter where they were in that process, so that whatever it is that they are trying to create, they can do it through our site.
So I'm going to ask you one more, and then I'm going to turn it back to Don. This probably might seem a little confusing, but hopefully you'll understand what I'm trying to say. If VistaPrint were a grocery store and it only had so much shelf space to display their wares, how do you decide what should go on the shelf next?
So we really do a lot of customer research to understand what is it that people are looking for. We also look at what our competitors are doing and what they're putting on their shelves more visibly to try to understand, where are they seeing the need and the desire. And we take, I'd say those are probably our two key inputs. And then we will work with our manufacturing facilities or sometimes third-party printers to understand how we deliver those. We stay very true to our core ideology, which is around we want to create great value for customers, and so we want to be able to deliver it at the best quality that we can for a price that makes sense to our customer. And sometimes, if we don't have the technology yet, then it won't get that shelf space because we'll invest time in building it. We've spent a good chunk of time creating new T-shirt technology to print on T-shirts the way that we feel like we should be able to deliver for the right price. And that was a multi-year product before we really were able to blow out our T-shirt category. So it is sometimes dependent on the technology and that catching up. But we're really hoping that by focusing on customer needs and kind of either filling a hole or providing something a little bit better than a competitor does, we are choosing the right products to go on that shelf.
Have you looked back at what you've done and said, wow, that was a mistake. We shouldn't have done that?
Yeah, we do that all the time.
So you tell us you actually make mistakes?
We do. We make mistakes. We will admit it. We're proud of it. That's how you learn. There are things that we have launched and we've gone back and evaluated and said, nope, that was a bad idea. Turn it off. And we've worked with our plants very closely, and they understand that this methodology isn't perfect, or this, this way we're doing it, and that we are not always going to get it right. And they're open to that. They understand that they may invest in figuring out how to deliver on something and then be told, nope, we're not going to do it. And so they're really looking at, well, how do we help prove this out versus, convert all of our equipment over for something that, may not be a long-term. How do we think about things in increments and make sure that we understand what the customer need is, what the market wants, what the volumes are, how we deliver on them, what our quality is, all of those factors before we go full rollout. But we are launching and pulling back, I want to say all the time, but we are definitely doing it.
Yeah. It's so just one more quick question, Don, if I might. Do you not own the printing plants? They're contract printers?
Well, we do own the printing plants. We own, I would say, roughly 80 to 90% of all the printing is done through owned plants. Okay. We will outsource when we need to, sometimes to get those learnings like I talked about, sometimes because we just don't have the ability. But we are expanding pretty rapidly our own printing facilities because we do want ultimately to have control over that entire supply chain.
Good. Sarah, thank you so much for a great interview. Don, back to you.
Well, where is your printing plant, Sarah?
We have printing plants all over the world. Our main North America plant right now is in Windsor, Canada. We have one in Las Vegas. We have another main plant in Venlo in the Netherlands. We have a plant in Australia. We have plants in Japan. We are looking for sort of the key geographic areas where we can resource a lot of the surrounding areas, and where we're finding that we aren't able to do it as quickly as we'd like, we are looking into opening new plants.
Well, if I recall, VistaPrint is based in Europe. Am I correct?
Yes, we are. Our corporate headquarters is incorporated. We are incorporated in the Netherlands. We have an executive office in Paris. We have two main corporate offices. One is here in Waltham in Massachusetts, and our other one's in Barcelona, Spain.
Okay, Sarah, it's been fascinating. You're a terrific guest. For our audience, she filled in at the last minute, and she did a heck of a job. Your website again, Sarah, and how people can reach you?
You can just come to VistaPrint.com, and if you want to reach out to us directly, just send an email to pr@VistaPrint.com.
Okay.
Nope, sorry, it's public relations at VistaPrint.com. It's not the acronym. Public relations at VistaPrint.com.
Okay, say it again for our audience. You're being told by your PR people. So say it again.
Public relations at VistaPrint.com.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you
so much. I appreciate it. It was great talking to you.
A general email, a general website will be linked on our on recalculating.biz tonight, where you can hear this and every other recalculating program, and you can also give us your feedback at a quick survey about what you want to hear, and if there's a possible guest or two you want to suggest. Thank you again, Sarah, for being with us.
Thank you.
Want to know more about health savings accounts for your company or yourself? Go to 2hsa.com and get a free employer's primer. Health savings accounts are a cost-effective way of offering health care benefits to your employees and yourself. HSAs build retirement funds for your employees, improve morale, and reduce your health care benefit cost. For a free employer guide to HSAs, go to 2hsa.com. That's 2hsa.com.
Dan Perkins here from recalculating.biz with your featured book. I want to tell you about a recent interview I had with Bob Bethel, a turnaround specialist with lots of success in small business. Bob's new book is Strengthen Your Business, Fail-Proof Strategies for Small Business. He tells us of his life successes and failures that have made him and his clients so successful. Over the years, Bob has brought 77 companies back from the brink and changed them into thriving, profitable businesses. His energy is amazing, and at 74, he proves that you can still have a great deal to give others if you just try. His suggestions are easy to understand and very helpful. One insight struck me was that most companies do not have a plan. The old Chinese proverb says, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there, is true today. Bob Bethel's book, Strengthen Your Business, can be found at Amazon.com or can be ordered at your local bookstore. This has been Dan Perkins with your Recalculating.biz featured book.
Marcus Lemonis, J.D. Powers, and John Scully, and 100 other presidents and experts contributed to Recalculating the book. Why did all these people agree to contribute to the book? I'm Don Mazzella, and I'm the editorial director of Small Business Digest. And for 20 years, we have been offering small business leaders information and data to increase profits. Recalculating the book was named the best small business book by the Independent Press Association. Whether you need help with marketing, staffing, finance, operations, technology, or many other subjects, they're all here in Recalculating the book. They're now available at Amazon at a reduced cost. We've also created the radio program Recalculating on recalculating.biz.
Welcome back to Recalculating, the program dedicated to American small business. Now it's time to bring together our two experts, Dan Perkins and Don Mazzella, as they discuss things that are happening now that are affecting your business success.
Dan, our next guest is co-founder and managing partner of Schwartz Perry Heller, Davida Perry, who has more than 30 years of experience advocating fiercely for clients as a trailblazer in employment law. Davida, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you because employee law, and more importantly, laws involving women and the workplace, and in fact, in everyday life, has certainly been in the news. We would like today to talk about it in terms of the small business employer and what he or she can do to mitigate some of the issues coming up. But before we do, we'd love to hear a little bit about your background.
So my background is, for the most part, as an attorney representing individuals who have been discriminated against in the workplace, whether it be sexual harassment or any form of employment discrimination. And I've been doing that for as long as there really have been laws that have permitted a recovery for victims of discrimination. But with the passage of time and with all the changes that are happening, I have found that employers, whether it be a small business, a mid-sized business, or a large company, need to have certain policies and procedures in place to help and protect their workforce, to satisfy the human rights laws, which are evolving, and to really just sort of do the right thing by the people in their employ. So I've been consulting with businesses and helping them structure their companies so as to really mean that there's zero tolerance for employment discrimination, and in particular sexual harassment.
Well, that's a topic that's very important to our audience. Dan and I have explored it with other guests. I'm going to ask one or two questions and then pass it on to Dan. I guess my first one would be, as a small employer, what are the 3 or 4 basic things you recommend that he or she do to implement and guard against sexual and discrimination in general?
I think that every company should have a robust procedure letting the workforce know what's not going to be tolerated, and that the leadership of the company stand behind those policies. So it's not just, having a piece of paper that says we don't tolerate sexual harassment. It's letting the workforce know that it's the owners, the founders, the C-level people at the company who are setting forth this policy, and they're the ones that won't tolerate it. So that when somebody comes forward, and we know from what we're reading in the news that this is a very scary thing to do, there can be serious consequences when someone comes out and accuses someone of wrongdoing, like what we're hearing about now. We've heard about celebrities who've been blackballed, whose careers were ruined. It's the same thing for your average worker. They come forward and they make a complaint about a very popular manager or supervisor, and that person has the power to, get all his buddies to blackball this person, to retaliate against this person. So it has to come from the top. It can't be something that HR is sort of administering on their own. It has to come from the top. And if there are meetings to discuss it, management should be there, owners should be there, so that everyone knows that this is coming from the company. This company has zero tolerance. So those are two: having the policy in the first place and letting it be known by the top people at the company that they support this policy are two really important things that a company can do, to hopefully prevent this sort of thing from happening. And then, of course, handling it appropriately when a complaint arises would be the top 3.
That's really good. I'm going to ask one question which came up this weekend. I was talking to somebody in a small company who had a poor performer, and this person happened to be white, and he was a poor performer, and they promoted a black co-worker to a supervisory role, and he complained that the reverse discrimination, and apparently the case has become complicated because, as you said, the company simply didn't have many policies. It was a small company, relatively speaking, 10 employees, and
right.
What do you say to situations like that?
Well, I mean, so that raises a whole bunch of issues, but it's not going to be enough to just be in a protected category. So if you're a minority, or you're a woman, or you're pregnant, or over 40, and something bad happens, and you can't think of any other reason, it's not going to be enough to be successful in a discrimination case to say, well, it can't be, obviously I'm a good performer. What they're saying about my performance is not true, so it must be because of my age. That's not going to satisfy your burden of proof. There's going to have to be, you don't need a smoking gun, but you're going to need a bit more. So if all that's happened in this person's case is that an African American was promoted and the Caucasian individual had his performance criticized, I don't know that would be enough, unless I knew more, to say that that's going to be a viable discrimination case.
Well, I agree with you, but the case is resting on the fact that the company didn't have any clear defined policies one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean that really would go to that he's not going to be able to prove his case by that. If a company did have policies and procedures and there was a complaint avenue for this person to take advantage of and they didn't, I don't want to get too complicated, but there's an affirmative defense that the company can rely upon to try to limit their liability. But just not having a policy isn't going to be enough for the employee to win their case. It shows that maybe the company didn't care, but it shows that the company didn't care, but he'd still need to satisfy his burden of proving that he got the bad performance evaluation because he's white and they favor African Americans.
Well, I think in this case the company thought it was too small to be affected by it.
No, but, that's not true. Yeah.
Well, I know that's why you're on this program.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dan.
Thank you, Davida. Thank you for joining us today on this very important subject. It's kind of interesting to me to look at the pendulum, if you would, and how it swings back and forth. There was a huge amount of outrage initially with Bill Cosby, then that kind of went down. Then Harvey Weinstein exploded and ultimately was responsible for creating the Me Too movement. And then we saw radio and television and newspaper and all kinds of organizations, leaders dropping like flies because of their activities relative to female employees. And I'm curious about in the small businesses you were talking with Don about 10, even in smaller, because I think 85% of all the small businesses in this country today, which control a huge percentage of the total workforce, are 5 and less number of employees,
right.
And a lot of them are just single employees.
Right.
I'm wondering whether there is a lack of focus or concern in the 0 to 10 employee market, that the leaders of those companies don't think they need any of the policies and procedures you're talking about.
Well, that may very well be the case, but they should know that the human rights laws, and there's certainly the federal law, which is going to cover every state, and then every state has their own local laws. New York actually happens to have a New York State law and a New York City law that covers the 5 boroughs of New York City. But these laws have, apply to companies with X number of employees. So the federal law, 15 or more. The New York City law, it's 4 or more. So, and now the New York City Council has just eliminated the number when it involves sexual harassment. So if it's a one-person company and there's an allegation, let's say that the owner, sexually harassed his secretary, 6 months ago she wouldn't be able to bring a claim, but now she could. So, I think that it's important for companies of all sizes, whether it's 1 or 1 million, to have policies and procedures that identify the laws that are prohibited, their policies and procedures, what their expectations are. It's a small, inexpensive thing to put in place. And, if the other types of discrimination go the way of sexual harassment, which hopefully it will, then it won't be limited to companies of a certain size. And so all companies should be creating anti-discrimination procedures and policies and letting their employees know how to report these things. It's very, very important. So it may very well be that they don't think, it can't happen to me, I'm too small. But, yes, it could if it involves sexual harassment. They just took that number away.
Depending on where you live. New York City, it could be different than Michigan or Florida.
Correct. That's correct.
The other thing that I am absolutely amazed and shocked at the same time. And two very public cases. I'm not even going to use the word classic. I'm just going to say cases. I find it unbelievable that NBC News knew nothing about the under-the-desk lock that Matt Lauer had in his office to keep women confined to his office.
Right.
I find it unbelievable that CBS never knew that Charlie Rose would meet women employees at his apartment in his bathrobe open.
Yep.
I don't understand how those things went on for decades and nobody said anything about them.
Well, there's a lot of fear in reporting it. There's still a lot of fear, even with this, there's a movement now, and there's support for women that come forward. But there's still a lot of fear because retaliation is a real thing. It really, really happens. I meet with women every day of the week who are telling me sometimes the retaliation is worse than the sexual harassment. Sometimes the sexual harassment is kind of minor. The guy asked her out for a date a few times, didn't like to take no for an answer, and then just basically obliterated the poor woman in her job, and she's fired. So sometimes the retaliation is more serious.
Yeah,
but, these are powerful. Charlie Rose, Matt Lauer. These are powerful men that garner huge ratings for the networks that they worked for.
And money.
And why not turn a blind eye to the whole thing? No one's reporting it.
The other thing that we talked a moment ago about the word pendulum, and I want to use an example that didn't necessarily get a lot of play, but it did happen. Is that the gentleman who was running for Senate, Roy Moore in Alabama?
Yeah.
There were a number of women who accused him of sexual harassment, and the conventional wisdom is that it was such a powerful charge that he was not going to win. And then we found out sometime later that one of the women who charged him actually forged his name in a book, and she later admitted that she'd lied about the accusation. Now, as a legal standpoint, is there redress on the part? Let's not use the political situation. If a person is accused, if I were accused of sexual harassment by an employee,
right,
and I denied it, and we went to court, and the company settled, or I settled, or whatever, and then we found out that the woman had actually lied, is there any redress on my part for what has happened to her?
I mean, not really if there's been a settlement, because now the case is over. But if the case goes, if the case is in court and you make a motion to have the case dismissed, and you get the case dismissed because they're, in some sort of summary judgment pretrial way, and the court finds that there are no issues of fact to be tried, so the court dismisses the case. In some very, very specific scenarios, there may be an application that you can make for sanctions for the bringing of a frivolous claim, and that would be usually a monetary payment that you would receive. But the case has to be so wholly without merit. It's a very, very high standard. I mean, the courthouse is open here. Anyone can sue anyone, and so there's pretty wide latitude to, let claims be prosecuted. Certainly there's a mechanism for them to be dismissed before trial, but to call a case flat out frivolous and sanctionable, the bar is pretty high, but that certainly would be the mechanism. I mean, if you find out she lied under oath later on, there might be something that you could do. I mean,
so what I'm trying. Thank you for that, Davida. What I'm trying to find out is, where is the pendulum? If a woman makes an accusation, it would appear, at least on the surface, in many cases in our country today, whether or not the woman is telling the truth, a lot of people just accept it to be true. And as a result, I'm sure if you've been in the practice of this law for 30 years, you have run across many cases where corporations are unable to distinguish whether there's guilt or not, but will settle a case just to get rid of it.
Yep.
And so that an individual can launch a false charge, but corporate America may just agree to settle to get rid of it, and the individual who's been accused basically has a situation where he's been blackmailed, or she's been blackmailed. Yet there doesn't seem to be any redress for that, is there?
Well, I mean, if it's that blatant, what you're describing right now, I feel as though some of that is going to come out in the discovery process as you're prosecuting the case. But what oftentimes happens, because this sort of behavior, and I'm talking about in the workplace, not the stuff that you're really reading about in the news about Harvey Weinstein or anything like that, but in the workplace, these things typically happen behind closed doors. Rarely do you get the sexual harasser who does it so publicly. So it ends up being a he said, she said. And, sometimes we find that, when HR comes in to do an investigation, they're really not qualified to make credibility determinations. They do sort of a superficial investigation, and they say, we can't substantiate this, so go back and, go to your desk and go back to work. And the person says, but I can't. Every time he looks at me, he's leering at me, and he's, doing this, that, and the other thing. So now they start litigation, and, whether it happened or not is going to be decided by a finder of fact, and how they're going to judge it is going to be based on the credibility of the parties. How consistent, the typical things that we use to determine whether or not somebody's telling the truth or not. So if there's a woman, let's say, that is blackmailing the supervisor or, doing something really made up to get back at him for some reason, I feel as though somehow that would come out in the process of discovery. And if he just says she's blackmailing me and there's no evidence of it in any way, then, it's going to fall into sort of that he said, she said scenario. I don't know if I answered your question, but
I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask it a different way, and when I'm done, I'm going to turn it back to Don.
Okay.
I served on a corporate board of directors for a number of years, almost 2 decades. And during that tenure on that board, we had a charge by an employee that was investigated internally, and the internal investigation could not verify the substantiation of the harassment on the part of the employee. But general counsel to us specifically said, I would settle to get rid of it. So it never got a chance for pretrial. They did their own internal investigation, and the board decided, I opposed it, but the majority of the board decided, we will ask the attorneys to structure a settlement so this thing goes away and we can get on with the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And so it never went to pretrial. The person always contended that they were innocent. We don't know whether they were or not, but the corporate board made the decision to eliminate the potential problem by settling it out of court, I guess was the best way. But it never got to pretrial. They did the accusation was made against the officer. The board appointed a team to look at it. They came back and said, we can't really substantiate this actually happened. But the outside attorneys to the board said, you're better off just to settle it and get rid of it than to protract it.
Yeah, I mean, so they made a smart business decision, and they weighed the risk that they faced if this person litigated against them, maybe how much they would pay in legal fees to defend the case, what would happen if she won. I'm assuming it's a woman, but maybe not. What would happen if she won? At least in New York and under the federal law, there's a transfer of legal fees to the prevailing party. So if she wins, even if she wins a little bit, the lawyer representing her gets to make an application for legal fees. So that could make a small, award a very large award. So, that was a smart business decision to eliminate the risk that the company would face, as well as the distraction and the time and the stress that these things, it takes a toll on the company as well. So,
okay.
That's what that makes
you.
a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
Thank you. Back to Don.
Davida, we're talking with Davida Perry. Do you have a website, Davida, before we go further?
I do.
And how do people reach you?
They can reach us at sphlegal.com.
Say it again for our audience.
Sure. S like Susan, P like Peter, H like Henry, the word legal.com, sphlegal.com.
Okay. Well, I'm listening to Dan. Many years ago, when I first started out in business, I worked for McGraw-Hill, and they had a very smart corporate attorney. And he said, the best attorneys are those that keep you out of the courthouse.
Yeah.
I never forgot that. Anyway, we're talking a lot of issues, and Dan's brought up a lot of issues. To me, it seems that right now the hammer, if you will, is on the accuser, and that it's very difficult for anyone to really escape an accusation, even if it is unfair. Would that be an accurate statement, Davida?
I think so. I think yes. At this point. Yeah.
Do you think that the anvil will swing the other way?
I don't know. I've been doing this for a long time, and when I first got started, we were dealing with Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas, and that was in all the papers, and that was, the start, in my opinion, of what could have been the Me Too movement, and it didn't gain traction then. So, definitely strength in numbers. We have many, many, many people speaking out now, which, was not happening back then with Anita Hill, but I hope that there's changes in all. I'm seeing great changes in New York. I don't know what's going on in other states, but my hope is yes.
So you believe that the society should be more open to recognizing that harassment is going on in the workplace and indeed in other parts of our society.
Definitely.
Okay, you can be stronger about it. This is what this program's about.
I'm pretty passionate about it. A day hasn't stopped when I haven't spoken to somebody who's described a horrific story. So while we sort of had, what happened in the early 90s when these human rights laws that enable a victim to bring a claim sort of first came into being, it seems like maybe from society's point of view there's been sort of a lull, like maybe everything has been okay for 30 years and this just sort of, emerged as a problem that we have to deal with. But that's really not the case. Harvey Weinstein, for example, is, he was beautifully protected by his company, and the way they structured his arrangement, they basically gave him a get-out-of-jail-free card. He was going to be there no matter what he did. It's only when it became sort of, all these women and the criminal component that he left. But for years he was protected by his own company for engaging in very bad behavior.
Well, we're running out of time, but will you explain for our audience what you mean by this get out of jail card? I know what you mean, but please explain it to our audience.
So I don't know if anyone in the audience has seen his employment agreement, but it's now online because it was unsealed by the bankruptcy court in Delaware, and it's dated October 20th, 2015. And the striking thing is that it's on the letterhead of the Weinstein Company. It's from Harvey Weinstein to Harvey Weinstein, and it's approved by Harvey Weinstein. So he structured this deal for himself. He and his brother were the co-chairman of the board, and it's a very long agreement. But what's in here that I've never seen before is a paragraph that provides for a monetary penalty that he would pay if the company makes a payment as a result of some, code of conduct violation, which would be one of these sexual harassment things. And he gets to keep his job. In any other scenario, if there's proof that somebody engaged in wrongful behavior, that person is going to be out the door. No looking back. They're going to be done and finished. And this agreement goes out of its way to protect him and permit him to continue to be there. But that's because he created this deal for himself. He's the author of his own employment agreement. I've never seen anything like this before in my life.
But there were other board members, and essentially Weinstein was a private company. It didn't have public shareholders. Am I correct?
Correct. So he and his brother Bob are co-chairman, and then he had 4 or 5 other people that, I haven't fully vetted to see who they are, but none of them would have been able to stand up to this force of the 2 Weinstein brothers. They were on the board. They were probably friends. He probably did business with them. That was what the board was. He controlled the board. He and his brother controlled the board.
So, but unfortunately, we have to cut it short. But as board members, they abdicated their board fiduciary responsibilities to the company. Is that your opinion?
What I'm saying is that Harvey and Bob Weinstein were the board. The board. They controlled everything. So Harvey Weinstein gave himself this sweet deal, had a provision in here that if the company paid money as a result of a code of conduct violation, all he had to do was pay a penalty to him. So, he's basically he's taking it from one account and giving it to another account. He's just moving the money around.
Well, we have been talking with Davida Perry. I think we could go on and on talking to her, but unfortunately we have to move on. Davida, your website again for our listeners?
My website is sphlegal.com.
Okay. We have been talking with Davida Perry. She has had more than 30 years' experience advocating fiercely for her clients, and we know from today's discussion that she is a fierce advocate. A link to her website will be on recalculating.biz tonight, where you can hear all of our shows, past and future. You can also tell us via a quick survey what topics and ideas you would like Recalculating to explore on future shows. Davida, thank you so much for being with us. Dan, before we go any further, I want our audience to know about your new runaway hit book on Alzheimer's disease and how it affects teenagers. Please tell us about it.
Yeah, Don, thank you. The book is called Why Can't Grammy Remember Me? It's a book written primarily for children ages 9 to 12, but really needs to be read by the entire family. And what I try to do is I try to take the subject matter of dementia and the challenges to a different level in the form of a mystery story with my two little detectives, two little girls, Hudson and Charlotte. And it really creates a breakthrough opportunity for small children and parents and families to begin to understand the problem with dementia. See, Don, the real challenge is that the children are the forgotten people. Mom and Dad spend so much time working to try and take care of Mom and Dad, they don't take the time to explain to the children what's going on in Grandma or Grandpa's brain. So you can buy it at Amazon.com, or you can order it through your local bookstore, or any online bookstore besides Amazon has it available. Why Can't Grammy Remember Me? Illustrations are spectacular. A story by Dan Perkins.
Your runaway bestseller, new book.
Why Can't Grammy Remember Me by Dan Perkins.
Recalculating, the program dedicated to American small business.
In New York this week, 500 managers and bankers from across the fintech world met to discuss the rising use of online financial resource companies. It was the latest of a number of such concaves across the country. What does it mean for small business leaders? Speaker after speaker droned on about the funds available to grow their small businesses. Other panelists talked about the ease such companies are making the loan process. Finding the money to grow can be as short as an hour. Some speakers said the average was 3 days versus going to a more traditional banking resource, which could take up to 3 months. But as one speaker pointed out, small businesses can suffer in one way from the fintech revolution. The personal banking touch that puts the small business leader in physical proximity to the banker, that personal touch that can come in handy should growth plans not work out exactly as expected, is not there. There is an old saying, when you owe enough to the bank, you own the bank. Most banks won't let that happen, but having a personal relationship can ease some issues. Fintech bankers are about doing everything over the internet. For those times when the small business succeeds, this works great. But what happens if they don't? It's harder without that personal touch.
We've been asked recently by a number of people, how can they listen to past shows? And if you go to recalculating.biz, you'll find a link to iHeartRadio, which will allow you to go back and listen to shows that you didn't get a chance to finish or never heard. So we encourage you to go there, recalculating.biz.
Well, Dan, we've had an interesting day today.
Mm-hmm. Some interesting guests and lots of things for our business partners, the entrepreneurs of America who are listening to our show, can take and put into productive use. So that's all we've got for today. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us on Recalculating. We hope the information you received on today's episode was helpful to you in starting and growing your business. Please go to our website, recalculating.biz, to contact us, to listen to past shows, and see special offers. Until next time, remember, if you grow, we grow. Join us next week for more helpful ideas to make your business a great success. Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful.